Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar, the second in the Revitalizing Ohio's Brownfields webinar series. My name is Aaron Clapper. I'm a Senior Project Manager at the Greater Ohio Policy Center. GOPC launched the Revitalizing Ohio's Brownfields initiative with an online platform, ohiobrownfields.com, following the establishment of the Brownfields Remediation Fund in the state's biennium budget, passed earlier this year. Last month, we held our first webinar in the series, focusing on preparation and planning for communities as they prepare to begin to look at identifying brownfield sites and prepare to access grant dollars through the Brownfield Remediation Fund. While the Brownfield Remediation Fund will provide an influx of grant dollars to assist in the brownfields revitalization across the state, brownfields programs are available to communities now and will likely be utilized in coordination with priority brownfield projects identified by local change makers. These programs, as you will hear today, are available through the Ohio Water Development Authority, the Ohio Department of Development, the Ohio EPA, and JobsOhio. Today, our panelists include Sally Gladwell, a principal at the Mannequin Group, Roxanne Anderson, a Brownfields coordinator at the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, Annie Blair-Com, a special projects manager at the Ohio Department of Development, Ken Heigl, executive director at the Ohio Water Development Authority, and Diana Rice, Director of Sites at JobsOhio. Our panelists will share current brownfields programming at their respective organizations, and Sally will start us off by talking about her work at the Mannequin Group and experiences utilizing these programs for her brownfields work. The launch of the OhioBrownfields.com website and the Revitalizing Ohio Brownfields initiative is in part made possible through the initiative sponsors. Now I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge those sponsors. Platinum sponsors include Hall & Associates, HCW Environmental Consultants, CEC, the Civil and Environmental Consultants Incorporated. At our gold sponsorship level, we have Hemisphere Brownfield Group and SME, Tucker Ellis and AECOM. Silver sponsors include Eurofins, Partners Environmental, and Terracon. At our bronze sponsorship level, we have Brownfield Restoration Group, Thrive Companies, TRC, Bricker and Eckler, TTL Associates, Environmental Remediation Contractor, and as a friend of the Revitalizing Ohio Brownfields Initiative, we have Tetra Tech. A special thanks to today's Platinum webinar sponsor, the Mannequin Group, which we'll hear from Sally today. Finally, before we jump in, I'd like to address a few housekeeping items. Participants are defaulted to camera off and no microphone. Should you have any issue or question, you can reach out to me or the GOPC staff account via the chat. There will be a Q&A period at the end. That'll be about the 15 minutes or so at the end. We'll let panelists get through and talk about their programs, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end in total. And the webinar is being recorded and will be available online on the ohiobrownfields.com, as well as I'll send it out when we finish today with the slides that we utilize. So with that, I'm pleased to turn over the reins to Sally Gladwell from the Mannequin Group, and she's going to talk about her work at the Mannequin Group and utilizing these programs that we're going to talk about today as well. Sally?
Thank you, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, I'm a senior vice president and principal at the Mannequin Group, and also serve on the board of directors and lead our company's geo-environmental business sector for Ohio. So that includes a strong focus on brownfields. Aaron, thank you for inviting me to be part of today. Thank you to you and your team at Greater Ohio Policy Center for all of the tireless advocacy to help clean up brownfields. Thank you to my fellow panelists, all of whom on behalf of your organizations are helping transform contaminated, underutilized land throughout Ohio. So I'm going to start by giving you all a brief snapshot of the Mannequin Group today, and then I'll spend a few minutes talking about two projects, just two projects of many brought to fruition thanks to brownfield funding of a variety of sorts. MSG is a little over 65 years old. We were founded in Toledo and now have 15 offices. 13 of them are in Ohio and Michigan, plus one in West Virginia, and our newest office is in Huntsville, Alabama. We've got almost 370 employees, and nearly all of our growth has been organic growth. I like to say that for a regional firm our size, no one offers more diverse services than do we. We are heavily focused on brownfield revitalization because we see the benefit to communities and businesses and the environment. Next slide, please, Erin. The Toledo Jeep plant was the longest continuously operating automotive plant in North America until it closed. And then following bankruptcy, the 111-acre property sat idle. The Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority purchased or acquired the property in 2010, intent on repurposing it. This project is a poster child for knitting together various sources of funding to realize the vision of revitalization. It benefited from US EPA assessment dollars, from not one, but two CORF grants, including one of the first sustainable reinvestment pilot track grants, from Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding, and more. All of the services you see listed here and on the next slide were either directly funded by or were leveraged by grants. In fact, over $14 million of grant funding was dedicated to this project to make it a reality. And all told, the whole revitalization effort was about $100 million investment. Next slide, please, Erin. So with this project, especially the former Jeep plant, now called the Overland Industrial Plant, we and project stakeholders learned that creativity and stacking of leveraging resources is what saves the day when trying to turn idle, contaminated land into a hub of productive use again. Over 440 folks are employed on the site now. Back in the day, we all collectively had what I sometimes refer to as random acts of brownfield kindness. We'd find a property that seemed to fit a grant's eligibility, and so we'd advance it as a project. And that's not all bad, but today we've got to be more diligent about our planning and about creating momentum and synergy. So the programs we'll hear about today shortly will help foster this, and this project, I think, forever will embody that whole emphasis of stacking resources, leveraging sort of thoughtful planning along the way. So on the other end of the spectrum is this small brownfield revitalization project, but it's still significant in its impact. This was a small corner gas station near Sandusky's downtown. It was abandoned and highly visible, and therefore an economic disincentive. Using funding from one abandoned gas station grant to remediate the site, some surprise tanks were encountered, and the city applied for and received a second abandoned gas station grant to contend with the surprises. Next slide, please, Erin. So this required a blending of federal and state sources of funding as well, from assessment to remedial strategy to cleanup and then redevelopment. Soon thereafter, this redevelopment was there. It's now a thriving business and a source of tax revenue again for the city. And again, a reminder, even though a small project, but very, very significant to the community, a reminder of how brownfields, large and small, can be transformed, thanks to the programs that we'll hear about momentarily. So thanks for allowing me some time today to talk about our brownfield experience and the funding that helps support it.
Thank you, Sally. With that, we'll kick it over to Roxanne Anderson from the Ohio EPA, who's going to talk with us about some assessment dollars and technical assistance provided at Ohio EPA.
Thanks, Erin. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. We always love the opportunity to share what we have to offer. Next slide, please. Sorry. To start off, I just want to say the Targeted Brownfield Assessment Program is offered to the people who can apply are government, quasi-government, and nonprofits. So we are available. We usually target areas or governments that cannot otherwise fund these types of projects, but we also have aided in many transactions and properties with the goal of helping to clean up these blighted areas. Next slide, please. So most of our funding does come from a US EPA grant, but we also have state grants. We utilize both types of funding. And because we use both types of funding, we usually aid in other projects, and we're usually the starting point. And because we also use state funding, a lot of times it can be used match in US funded projects. The great thing about our program is that it is at no cost to the applicant. We do the project from start to finish. The only thing that really has to be done is the application, and then you get your product of the assessment report or asbestos report or whatever it is that we're working towards for you. We use our own contractors. So it's a simple, easy process for whoever's applying. Next slide, please. Pull my notes up. So we offer a variety of things. We offer phase 1 and phase 2 assessments, asbestos surveys, remedial plans, but we also offer a lot of technical assistance and really anything that's toward a larger goal. So we can do anything from a smaller project, such as doing the preliminary assessment work for an abandoned gas station to get you into the abandoned gas station program with grant funding. We can do a preliminary assessment for a larger community-wide grants that you can apply for with the US EPA. But we're looking at also focusing on corridors or larger areas. We are doing a project in a small location in Ohio, which focuses on the downtown corridor as a whole. So we can look at multiple projects or multiple sites within that area and help with planning process. So it's really a wide variety of things that we can focus on. But overall, we are usually a starting point in the state to either get that process started or get you in the right direction to where you need to be. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we end up collaborating with quite a few other agencies or direct you in that direction if that is where you need to be. For example, with the abandoned gas station program, we usually connect people who are looking for larger projects that might apply with JobsOhio, or we also work with helping with the US EPA assessment grants. The US EPA has an annual funding that they do, which just passed, unfortunately. But if you were to want to apply for any of these types of fundings next year, we also offer a workshop. It is a competitive grant process. Our grant process is not competitive. And you can apply for up to, I believe this year, and it changes every year, up to like $600,000 for community-wide assessment grants, $500,000 to $1 million for cleanup funds. They have site-specific assessment funds for up to $300,000. So there's large pools of money that you can apply for, and our money, our federal and state funded money, can help get you ready for the application process by doing preliminary assessments. And if we use state funded money to help you with any specific TA or anything like that, it can be used as match. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, the link on this slide most likely will not work. We just updated our website on Friday, I believe, and some of the links are still being worked out. However, you can contact Dan, my coworker, and I, which our email is later in the slide pack, for you to access the application. But it's a very simple application. You fill out your eligibility. The most important thing is that we need access. And the great thing about this is that you do not, as a government, quasi-government, nonprofit land bank, you do not need to own the property to apply for the assessments to happen. So in this case, this happens a lot of times with wanting to do a property transfer, where you're wanting a redeveloper to take over, but they want these assessments done first. A land bank can apply on a property owner's behalf. You do not have to own the property, but we do need access. It's non-competitive, first come, first serve basis. Next slide, please. Since we use our own contractors and we mostly do things in-house, our timeframes can range. We just started a new process with our contractors, so we're not exactly sure what this is going to look like moving forward, but our assumption is that it will be very similar. So right now it's average of 3 to 4 months for phase 1, 3 months for asbestos, 2 to 3 months if we do limited phase 2 sampling or anything like that, and 2 to 3 months for a remedy plan. For projects that we do both phase 1 and phase 2 on, it's between 4 to 6 months total. I don't think that I've had very many projects, barring complications, that have lasted over 6 months in the process. So if you're thinking about leveraging it or doing it preliminarily for another project that you're working on, it's good to start the process sooner rather than later. Next slide, please. In our program, we also offer voluntary action plan technical assistance. So if you are looking to take this from phase 1, phase 2, and go into a cleanup program, we offer technical assistance for that. And we also offer the VAP certified, or the VAP phase 1 and phase 2, so that they're ready for that program. And we also have ASTM phase 1 for that as well. So that is another service that we offer and that you can just reach out to us for. Next slide, please. And this is our information. So if you guys have any questions or any issues on a project and you don't even know where to start, or you have a question about the federal grant program or anything like that, just let us know. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Roxanne. I do want to also mention the Greater Ohio Policy Center. We have been monitoring and tracking and looking at a piece of legislation at the State House, Senate Bill 83. And I know Roxanne touched on the TBA program, which utilizes federal and state dollars to assist with that grant program for phase 1 assessments. And so what that piece of legislation that's moving through would be to increase by $150,000 the capability of Ohio EPA to provide more grant dollars to communities through that TBA program. So we continue to track that, and we'll keep everyone updated as that moves through. But just another a piece of information to look at as well. So with that, I'll kick it over to Annie Van Blaricom, excuse me, from the Ohio Department of Development, and she's going to talk about current programming at that department.
Thank you so much, Erin. Yes, this is Annie Van Blaricom. I am Special Projects Manager at the Ohio Department of Development. Thank you so much for having me, Erin. And I'm looking forward to talking about our one program we have at the moment at development. So our Brownfield remediation goals, same, remove obstacles and promote sustainable redevelopment. We have a lot of partners. You'll probably hear more about this throughout the webinar today, but we work with the Ohio Water Development Authority, JobsOhio, Ohio EPA, Buster, and also the US EPA. Since one agency can't, we don't have, there are programs all over, and so we try to communicate as much as possible to get these sites cleaned up. And I think we work together pretty well. So the Brownfield spectrum, the work we do is ultimately to prepare the site for redevelopment and make the site safe, revenue producing, and a positive contributor to the community. Excuse me. So we do have a pilot project for the Community Brownfield Program. And this was created with funds that were their program income from US EPA grants that the agency received. And we are working on a pilot project for asbestos remediation in Warren, Ohio. After that is complete, there will be approximately $2.3 million left in the fund. And the site is the former St. Joseph Hospital. It's a $2.5 million asbestos remediation project that development has granted to the city. And the city of Warren has committed $2 million in demolition costs for the remainder of the project. It's made of 12 interconnecting buildings, totaling 270,000 square feet on 15 acres. And it's close to a veterans health clinic and a domestic violence shelter, which feel the ill effects of vandals and increased drug activity on the property. So they're very much looking forward to getting this cleaned up, and we are so happy to be able to help them. The short-term end use will be green space, and then they will be working with the community to figure out what exactly they want to do with that in the long term. Thank you so much. It was very brief. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.
Thank you, Annie. I did want to ask just for participants on as well. Sorry to put you on the spot, but the $2.3 million left in that pilot program, the process for moving forward with that, what does that look like if anyone
So
was interested?
since it's a pilot program, we don't have anything quite official in place when it comes to guidelines. So if you're interested in those dollars, feel free to email me. As we know, there will be a new program coming out soon with significantly more dollars attached to it, but you know, this money is also still available.
Thanks, Annie.
You're welcome.
We'll kick things over to the Ohio Water Development Authority with Ken Heigl to hear about what their work on Brownfields looks like.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks everybody for joining today. And thanks again for inviting the authority to participate. Next slide, please. For those of you who are not familiar with the authority, we were actually created by the state of Ohio back in 1968 for the sole purpose of providing loans to local governments for the construction of water and sewer infrastructure. So for the last 50 years, we've been running those programs. Next slide, please. And these three programs here is 90% of our work. This is our major water and sewer programs. We have a freshwater loan program directly with the authority, and then we help Ohio EPA with their 2 SRF programs. Just to give you a flavor for the magnitude we do, these 3 programs this year will lend out $1 billion, over $1 billion, to about 400 projects. So we're probably the #1 funding source for local governments for water and sewer. Next slide. Over the years, we have developed other programs to help the needs of the state, including the Brownfield loan. We also have an LED program and an on-site stormwater that runs very similar to the Brownfield loan program. It's got its nuances, and we have program guidelines for each of these. So of course, today I'm going to talk about our Brownfield loan program. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about eligible borrowers. This is our only program that allows us to loan to a private entity in addition to our local government agency. So also the borrower needs to be the owner of the Brownfield site. You need to have control of the property where we're loaning the money for the remediation. You also, borrowers must participate in EPA's voluntary action program. This is what gives us the ability to loan to private entity. It's in the Ohio Revised Code that any private entity borrower from this program need to be in Ohio EPA's voluntary action program. So that's key. Also, the borrowers, of course, need to be current on all taxes, loan payments, and other indebtedness to the state of Ohio. So we got to make sure that you're a good player. So next slide, please. Let's talk about how much money we have available, starting with our maximum loan amounts. We can give up to $500,000 for a phase 2 loan if you need some money to complete your phase 2, up to $5 million for that phase 2, and then if you want to include that remediation. So in essence, you could come to us for the first $500,000 in loan, and we can roll that into your phase 2 and give you an additional $4.5 million. So the max we can loan out on any project is $5 million. The reason for that max is just because of the funds that are available. For this program, the on-site stormwater and the LED, we budgeted around $20 million a year available funds. And so we want to make sure we can get the money to as many projects as we can. If you've done work on your phase 1, those expenses can be eligible as part of your phase 2 or your remediation loan. You can also come to us after your phase 2 is complete and apply for the remediation loan and also ask for reimbursement of your phase 1 and phase 2 cost. The last very important piece, bold on this item, prevailing wage rates do apply. We are a government agency and we are governed by the 4115 prevailing wage rates. That's part of our code as well. So next slide, please. All right, let's talk a little bit about eligible cost. We're really looking to fund the items associated with the remediation. Site prep to get that remediation to happen, course, removal and disposal of the substances, hazardous substance, application prep, hired a consultant, so on, that could be eligible. The legal work associated with the remediation, and of course, any consulting fees and Ohio EPA fees. And next slide. So moving into the loan terms, we told about the max loan amount. Let's talk about how long you can borrow the money for. And these terms are set so what our major sewer program and this program is really based on a revolving loan concept. We loan the money out, borrowers pay it back, we loan the money out again. So it's in the best interest to get the money back to us so we can loan out to the next borrower. So we've come up with a maximum term of 15 years on a remediation loan, 5 years for an assessment loan. Interest rate, you can't get any cheaper. We follow the 10-year treasury plus 10 basis points or 1.5%, which is greater. So for example, on Friday, the 10-year treasury was 135. We had the 10 basis points, so to 145, lower than the 1.5. So if you came to us for a loan this month in December, the interest rate would be 1.5. So the U.S. Treasury has been bouncing back and forth lately, but Friday's rate is below the 1.5. So that would dictate the loan, the interest rate for this loan. No prepayment penalty. So a lot of times these brownfield loans are also part of a larger project, the redevelopment piece, where the borrower has borrowed millions of dollars for the redevelopment. Sometimes those projects are refinanced 5 years in. This loan can be taken out as well without penalty. So they can pay it off at any time. We do require a pretty substantial, not substantial, but we're going to be really working with the borrower on this loan security. Again, it's to ensure that the state gets the authority gets the money back and we can lend it out again. So form of loan security, it's case by case basis, depending on the project needs. Sometimes we're looking for a personal guarantee. Sometimes we are looking for a corporate guarantee. And in some cases, lately, we've been asking for a deposit account equal to a couple of loan repayments, so that we're ensuring that we're getting our money back. So, but case by case basis and what the financials and the strength of the borrower looks like of what that form of security takes on. All right, next slide. Yes, moving on to fees. We do charge a $1,500 fee for a private borrower. A governmental agency, there is no application fee, but for our private entities, $1,500. And the purpose there is with a private entity, the financial review is a lot more intense than with a governmental agency. The loan fee, very low, 0.35% of the loan amount. Just I like to say this point whenever I talk, that 0.35% is the same low fee that the authority charged in 1968. So that has not gone up. And that's what we charge across all of our programs. Also, with the Brownfield program, we have a lot of expenses on the legal side on our end as we work through that loan security and the loan agreement. So we do require that the borrower pay up to $15,000 of OWDA's legal costs. Anything above $15,000 is the responsibility of the authority. The application fee is non-refundable, and that's submitted with the application. The loan fee won't be due until the board approves the loan and the agreement is signed. And the legal cost starts with the submission of the application fee. All right, next slide. Moving on with the application process. Here's how we like to work with our borrowers. First thing, if you're interested in this program, you have a project, we invite you to contact us for an informational meeting. At that meeting, we'll go over, you can explain the project to us. We're really looking to see what stage of the process you're in. Have you secured other funding? Are you working with JobsOhio? Are you working with A&E over at development? What else are you doing? Where else is the money coming in from? What's the timing? What's the timing of the future development? Because a lot of times on these projects for repayment, the source of repayment pledged to us to repay these loans is based on the revenue being generated by the redeveloped project. So we need to have a good firm understanding of when that additional revenue will be flowing in to time up this loan at repayment. So those are the kind of things we're going to get from you at that informational meeting. If you have any questions about the program, you don't have a project, please feel free to call us anyways, and we can give you, higher level information. But once you have a serious project, we first invite an informational meeting. From there, then you'll start working with our loan officer, Kim Killian, and starting the application process. Once we get that completed application in, and we start our legal and financial review of the borrower, at that time when we feel it's in good shape, we'll invite the borrower to come to the authority's board meeting. We meet monthly to give a presentation about the project. Following that presentation to the board, the following month, we'll ask our board to approve the loan. From that process, then we start working on the loan agreement and security and finalizing all the documents. Once those have all been agreed upon and signed, then we can start dispersing the money. We'll disperse money as you spend it. If you have already spent money on phase 1, phase 2, you can go ahead and submit those invoices to us and we'll pay as soon as that loan is closed. We can also look back. There's no period to look back. So if you did the phase 1 2 years ago, that's fine. We'll include that in the project. So with that, I think I'm done. The last page, there's the contact information. The full set of program guidelines is on our website. You can check that out. You can contact me or Kim, our loan officer, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ken. That's very insightful. Finally, we'll kick over to Diana at JobsOhio, which I know a few other panelists have talked about the JobsOhio work, and so we'll hear about the revitalization and Brownfields work over at JobsOhio with Diana.
Thanks, Aaron. And as all of my colleagues on this program have said, thank you for hosting this. Thank you for asking us to participate. And as you might have gotten a theme from Sally and from Roxanne and from Annie and from Ken, we collaborate. I'd like to say we have a party all the time, but I'm not sure it's always necessarily fun with party enthusiasm, but we do not operate singularly. Rarely can a project that requires brownfield cleanup remediation efforts can work singularly. You really need to have that coordination of all of the different pieces and parts. What we all try and do too is make sure that we can provide as much support to a project as possible. So the earlier the communications are to the various entities, and generally speaking, if you talk with one, we loop in the others because the references are there, because we want to be able to each pick a lane, follow through on our lane, so those, as the sort of a wonky terminology, eligible costs get delineated, you can have maximum support to your project. Next slide, please, Aaron. So our revitalization program, for any of you who have not by chance seen a bunch of the JobsOhio communiques this year, we're celebrating our 10th year. So we were stood up by Governor Kasich. Funding comes from the Ohio Liquor Authority. And one of the great pieces I've been able to be involved in is our Brownfield program. It was effectively systematically started at the same time the state through EPA and ODOD shut down the Clean Ohio program, mostly to provide additional flexibility. You heard Roxanne talk about some limitations of who the eligible candidates are. JobsOhio has flexible pieces, meaning you can be a private developer and receive funds from us. You can be a non-profit, there's more flexibility on who the eligible applicants are. The tricky part that gets a little bit difficult is the fact that JobsOhio's programs require that highly likely end user with the phase 2 grants, as well as the job creator with our revitalization loans. So we've outlined here phase 2 assessment grants for JobsOhio. You don't have to have your executed letter of intent or a lease or specific components, but we have to have that highly likely end user that is in one of our targeted industries. So that eliminates pretty quickly entertainment venues, hospital venues, hotel or retail type uses, and multifamily. So we're targeting the more sustainable businesses that would create jobs in sites that would then provide additional increase of their tax base. And those phase 2 grant assessment grants can be up to $200,000. Our programs are reimbursement. So you have to enter into the agreement, pay actually the certified professional to do the work, request reimbursement after you have shown the work product and the payment. Our revitalization loans and grants are determined per project based on how, where, what the project components are. When we look at the grants and loans, the grants typically are up to $1 million. The loans can be up to $5 million. We do not have quite as good of a rate as Ken does with OWDA on his brownfield loans, but they're supposed to be flexible, meaning they can take a second position. So your primary lender has control of that. We will go through a securitization process to make sure the loan is supportable from that standpoint. But the projects and ultimately the companies are committing to the job creation. So let me throw something out there. When a property has the need for cleanup on it, no one wants to own it. So what can happen is the port or a CIC or a land bank or some other entity can own the property and be the one getting the cleanup funds with the company ultimately committing to the jobs. We, like EPA and everybody else, will not be able to offer funds to support cleanup with the company that caused the remediation issues. So that's one thing that we're all very consistent on. The loan program is oftentimes included in order to provide additional capital flexibility. It is not instead of a grant. The project is looked at as its components, the industry sector, the number of jobs created, et cetera. And then loans can be offered if there are significant remediation eligible costs. The loans can be added to increase that flexibility. In 2015 through 2018, we tried a speculative program for development that was called our pilot program. Pilot because we could put it out there, we could complete it and close it, and we could learn from it. So in that time frame, we offered, and at the time, our revitalization program was the vehicle for us to offer that. We offered loans and grants that would provide speculative development opportunities. We were very select in how we did it, and we learned a lot from it. Next slide, Aaron. The next slide will show, before I jump into the other thing, our revitalization efforts that we've had since January of 2014 through basically September of 2021, we've created over 19,000 jobs that would be in sustainable industry sectors since that inception and have leveraged almost $5 billion in additional capital investment. Our programs have totaled at least $260 million for both the phase 2 assessments, the grants, and the loans. And these are just executed programs. These are not offered and potentially in negotiations out there. So our programs have been significant in providing real revitalization efforts in the state of Ohio. Next slide, Aaron. As I was talking about, I'm going to segue into something that is not totally based on remediation, brownfield components, but it is revitalization pieces. What we've looked at, we've created a speculative program that started in July of 2020, so right in the middle of the pandemic. And when you look at some of these statistics, we have leveraged, we've offered almost 40 projects support. We've offered over $40 million in support to that and have leveraged over $500 million in investment. What is most interesting, in the middle of a pandemic, we have looked at building square feet of over 4.5 million square feet of speculative space. Of that, approximately 750,000 square feet is office type space. And the remaining would be industrial, light manufacturing, some hopefully small parts of warehousing, because those are not often job creators, but light manufacturing and or logistics type of use in that. So we've hit areas, I can't say we've hit all 88 counties, but we've got 6 regional network partners who are very active in pursuing these projects. So some of these projects might have had cleanup dollars either through Clean Ohio or other entities, and we're not quite ready for development. And then they became developable. We also did add a bit of a opportunity to bring in some greenfields, but we still have been pursuing our brownfield cleanups. So the one piece from JobsOhio perspective that I just want to emphasize to everyone, this is so much a collaborative effort. When you have an idea, and if you're looking at it from the local or the regional, more economic development perspective, trying to figure out how to help a developer cover that, there's a gap, it's a cost when you're doing cleanup or you have site work you have to do based on previous use. A lot of times people just, they don't want to manage that risk, or they don't want to absorb that additional cost. That's where we want to try and come in and minimize that additional cost effort so that they're not just chasing a greenfield on that. So when we look at these programs, how do we get in there? Please reach out there. I will say with all of my colleagues, we talk on at least a quarterly basis on projects and what's out there and what questions we're getting from people and how we're hitting it. What are we missing? We try and be collaborative and proactive in how we do that. Please reach out to any one of us and ask the questions. There's no bad question from that standpoint. Determine its eligibility, determine how or who might hit first. If there's not a job creation component to it, sometimes I will have to pass it off to Ken or to Annie or some of the tab programs to get pieces going. So please make sure you do reach out to all of us. We are enthusiastic collaborators on that. And so I think I'm done at this point in time. And if there are any questions for any or all of us, and Aaron might kick all that off, please let us know.
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to all the panelists for your presentations today and sharing the great information. We do have opportunity if there are questions from the audience. If anyone has a question they'd like to submit, you can send that to myself or in the chat, and we can answer those questions. I think I'd kick us off and ask the question, if I can, from the panelists. I know we've talked about the coordination, but say someone has a project that they're looking, where is the best place to start, Diana or others? If you are kind of at square zero for a local government or whatnot, where's the best place to start for those folks?
So Aaron, I'll jump in and answer that with a little bit of a question. One, when you're starting off, do you know what the level of cleanup is? That's oftentimes where the start is. So do you have something through the TAB program with Roxanne and Ohio EPA? The question would be, if you understand the cleanup, if there is a job creator, I'd say come to us. If there's not, Ken, you want to jump in and talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. And as you noticed in my presentation, we have all loan money. We don't have any grant money. So with the grant money out there, I think you need to explore the grant money first, and then we will follow that with loan money. So that's my response.
And I'm going to jump in and just say that a lot of times communities that are just starting off and don't really know where to start do start with us, just because if you don't know what you're working with or what your possibilities are, a phase 1 assessment is really the first thing that you need to do. So a lot of people do start with us. If you're not sure where to go or who to talk to, you can always reach out to us and we'll guide you in the right direction.
Roxanne, you and the Ohio EPA host informational sessions and technical assistance and things of the sort like that. So checking out the Ohio EPA for when those become available. And I know you host those often. So the opportunity to kind of start at that 101 level or get a little better technical assistance and whatnot is always available through EPA and other partners.
Yeah, we also do that on request. So if there's a community that wants us to come out, right now, pre-COVID, we would just come out to the community. Right now, we're kind of in limbo, but we can still do meetings via Zoom or Teams. But we do those types of presentations to communities or meetings per request. It's not just when they're scheduled.
I'll jump in and add one more thing to that. I think people get really intimidated. I don't know how many people are on this Zoom call today, but when you know you have lots and lots of people out there, oftentimes you get freeze things on your questions. So that smaller environment sometimes is a better way to be able to have a more fruitful exchange of information and asking questions, because at least what I've learned over the time, there's no dumb question. And some of the basic questions sometimes are repetitive, but it's amazing how many new questions we get that we all talk about when we do our quarterly sessions, to be able to say, wow, here's another thing. So take advantage of Roxanne's offer to get out there, and believe me, if she feels the audience needs it, somehow she calls me and says, hey, want to join in?
Thank you. That's very helpful. We have a quiet audience today. No other questions have come through. So we might wrap up a little early. I did want to announce, I say thank you to each of you for your participation today. I do also want to announce and have everyone mark their calendar. We will be hosting our third webinar in the series, and we'll be joined by the Ohio Department of Development. That'll be on Wednesday, January 12th at 11 a.m. They will be joining us to talk about the Brownfield Remediation Fund and the rules and guidelines that are inevitably coming soon by the end of the year, we anticipate. So additional details and updated information and whatnot will always be available on our OhioBrownfields.com website. And then we will also be blasting out with a registration link for that webinar to take place at the start of the year. And I saw you go off mute. Did you have something else to say?
Nope, I might have accidentally hit it, so sorry.
No, you're okay. I thought maybe you had something else to add. But with that, I think we've had a great conversation today. Again, thank you to each of the panelists and for a good conversation. I know there's anticipation for the Brownfield Remediation Fund to come through with those grant dollars, but it's always great to understand the current programming that Ohio has. I know on the previous webinars that we've had, our panelists and stakeholders have shared that the Brownfields work in Ohio is kind of second to none, and it's great that what we have in the state. So keeping in mind all of the partners and available options that folks have as you continue the great work of Brownfields. So with that, I thank everyone, and we look forward to seeing everyone at the start of the year for our next webinar and continued information that's available on OhioBrownfields.com.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.